Best.Podcast.Ever is sponsored by the Gertzberg Law Firm, a full-service, award-winning business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that appreciates what matters most to businesses: practical advice and cost-effective results. We understand your business because our team has the unique perspective of having real-world business experience themselves. Learn more at gertzberglaw.com. While you're there, be sure to check out Cover My Six, a proprietary legal audit that will identify, target, and minimize your business's exposure to lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermysix.com to learn how you can prevent a lawsuit before it starts. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
People are putting big money into influencing people's behavior on social media, and that in and of itself is part of the problem. We need to get back to front porches and coffee shops and breakfast joints, and that's where you find the common ground. When you're 3 sentences on Facebook about some issue, you're not going to find common ground.
Hey folks, Alex Gertzberg here. Welcome to Best Podcast Ever. I am glad you're here, and you're about to listen to a really cool conversation. Steve Crandall and Karl Maersch, both veterans of Best Podcast Ever. If you go to prior episodes, you'll find one with each of them, each great interviews in their own right. So Steve and Karl are both Chagrin Falls folks, and both lawyers, and both really great thinkers. I think I love talking to them. I loved talking to them here today. We really get into it, man. We rolled up our sleeves and dug in. We talked about personal wins, about local politics, about federal politics, national politics, about elections. We talked about high school coaching, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Steve is a medical malpractice attorney. You're going to want to check out Crandall and Pera Law. That's his law firm. Karl is an intellectual property lawyer, but that's like one of 4 hats that he wears. So like I said, I had so much fun having this conversation with them. And I predict this is going to be the first of several, or hopefully many. The gloves came off. We got into it, and had a really good chat. So enjoy it. I did, and have fun. Have fun listening to it. All right. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the Gertzberg Law Firm podcast studios talking to 2 giants of Chagrin Falls, 2 intellectual forces.
I don't know about that, but
no, it's true. It's true. Steve Crandall and Karl Maersch, the lawyer to non-lawyer ratio, the divorced to non-divorced ratio here is
true.
3 to 0.
Right.
Icons of Chagrin Falls. That might be the podcast episode. 2 icons and Alex. So we were just talking about what format or lack thereof we're going to have here, and so we're going to figure that out. Let's just get into it. Let's start with some wins. 1 personal, 1 professional. Steve, I say you go first.
All right. First of all, kudos for pronouncing Karl's last name right.
Was that correct?
Yeah, it was.
Right?
Spot on, dude.
Oh, my goodness.
It was not always done correctly. But so personal win, I would say recently 2 of my kids came back from break from college. And the thought occurred to me that my personal win was that I have a great relationship with my kids, despite the fact that they went through a divorce. And it was a very difficult time for the kids, very difficult time for me as a parent. You're, extremely worried. especially at the beginning. But to see the transformation from when they were in, Gurney and middle school, high school to now adults, we have a great relationship. So I feel like I handled that period as best as I could, as maturely as I could. And the nice thing about coming out on the other side is you have a great relationship with them when they're adults. And you realize that really from now until you pass away, hopefully you die before them, that's really the huge part of your relationship. It's not so much, it's certainly important when they're little kids, but when they're adults, it's a totally different relationship. And I think it's a good relationship because of how we handled things together through the divorce. So that's been really on my mind lately.
What's professional?
Professional.
Wait, let me jump in real quick. Cause what's funny is that Alex sent us these new topics like 20 minutes ago, right? So I was sitting at lunch and I thought about what I was going to say with a personal win, and I knew exactly what you were going to say. Like, and mine's exactly the same thing. Right?
Really?
Look, we're friends on social media, and I see your stuff, and I see what you do with your kids and pictures of your kids, and it's. I think it's very similar to the way I run my family, and it's nice to see. And I swear, when Alex sent that, I go, I know what Crandall's going to say, and that's it, right? And you and I talk about being divorced dads and how you manage that, and the things that you do, and it's nice to see it when it comes out on the other end.
I want to be able to have your win at some point in the future. That's a great win, the one you just described. I'm not there. I'd love to be there. And I can only say that it is a treacherous path.
Sure is.
The one you walked down, the one I'm walking down right now, I really don't know. I remember talking to you, Karl, at one point, and you were and I remember you were describing how well you and your ex and your kids managed. Have you been married once or twice?
No, twice. I'm ahead of you guys. I'm one.
But I remember you telling me we were at.
You're not ahead of me.
You've been divorced twice?
I'm on my third marriage.
Is that right?
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
nutty.
I don't know.
No, but that is. I remember when you were telling me it was Rick's. We were sitting and you had great advice, and I had just started my divorce, and I hope to be there one day. I'm not there yet, but here we're hijacking. What's your professional win?
You want to finish your personal? You were on your personal.
Are we all doing personals first? All right.
Well, it sounded like Karl wanted to do his personal.
Well, my personal is. That's the point, right? My personal is the same as yours, right? My personal is my relationship with my kids, far and away, and I think that it's just sort of there's a lot of There's a lot of things that go into it, but it's nice when it pops out and you have these kids that are adults that you have a great relationship with, and we don't have the normal teenage, we have the stresses, but it's just not right. They're good kids, and I'm proud of that. And I knew you were going to say that too.
All right. I am completing a personal health stretch where I haven't eaten meat. I started a no meat experiment a few months ago, and I've gone like 3 months without meat, and about a month without alcohol. Dude,
what are you doing with your life?
The last time.
Is this called torture? Or?
No. I'm from Wisconsin, man.
Stop
you can't live like that.
Listen to me. I feel great. I like putting myself through occasional experiments like that just to see what impact it'll have. And also to build that discipline muscle, which I lack in most areas of my life. And so, yeah, the alcohol thing was really more just a, it was turning into, an everyday thing with clients, or just coming home and just reaching for that glass of wine. Like I wouldn't get drunk, I would just drink a glass every day. And I couldn't remember a time when I didn't have one. So January has been almost entirely alcohol free. I'm feeling good. I'm sleeping a lot better. And I'm meditating every single day. So there's been this string of personal health habits that have strung together in a volume that I don't think I've ever strung together before.
That's great.
Yeah. All right. Professional.
Professional. Here's one thing. When I first started out as a lawyer, I worked for firms. Got the computer guy who comes and takes care of you. They send you a check. There's an HR person. Everybody takes care of you. the idea of owning your own business to me seemed just unfathomable. So end of 2010 into 2011, I started my own law firm. And the reality that you can do it and you can do all these things yourself and then build and grow has been the most eye-opening experience I've ever had. And I've told my kids this, and I would tell anybody else, that you should certainly get some experience in whatever field you're in. And then I totally encourage you to go out and do it on your own, because there's nothing like it. So I would say the success of the firm from 2010 until now, and hopefully continued success until I retire, is definitely my biggest business win.
Do you remember what day you opened in 2010?
Well, I had to separate from my old firm, so I say 2010, but I would say that the formal date was April 1st, 2011.
April 1.
April Fool's Day.
Will be 9. That'll be your 9-year anniversary.
So were you trying to get him on an ethical violation where he's working for a firm and he's soliciting clients already?
He's not in tune with that.
When's the birthday party?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's April 1. I echo that. And what I tell, most of our clients are businesses, you have to get out there early and just start failing. Just get those failures out of the way and keep getting them under your belt. Get used to it and don't fear them.
Agreed.
We've got a lightning round question coming about failure, so we're going to circle back to that. Karl, professional win.
It's the same exact thing as Steve's. I own 3 companies, and it sounds more fancy than it is. A consulting firm, a law firm, and a patent monetization firm, but
it does sound fancy.
And it's funny, right? Because the win for me is that I set up my professional life to sort of be what I want it to be, right? I mean, I told you guys before we got on the air, I was at home an hour and a half ago in a fish t-shirt and flip-flops. And I set it up to work that way, right? I mean, I was working for firms and I worked for a couple Fortune 500 companies, and ultimately I wanted to stay centered in Cleveland, and there's not a ton of what I do in Cleveland. And so just going through the not sort of being able to find a job with any of the big companies here because they just weren't interested in my skill set. And so deciding to hang out my own shingle and, just sort of make it work the way I wanted it to work. And one of the reasons I did that is I was traveling too much. I was missing kids' stuff, and I felt like I could control my schedule better and control my life better if I started my own company. And I did that, and it's worked. It's been great.
So how long ago was that for you?
June 1st, 2014.
Okay. 6 years this year.
Yeah. Coming up on 6 years.
Do you guys, so my professional win, would be just the way we finished the year. We did 33% increase in revenue over the prior year.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been a pretty crazy year. And, do you guys know about that new Bar Association committee, Legal Innovators? You guys coming on Wednesday?
I've seen it on social media, but I cannot because I'm traveling.
The reason I mention it is because it rolls into that win. I think a lot of what is responsible for the growth of the firm is thinking differently about the practice of law and thinking differently about running a law firm. And a lot of the revenue growth came from non-traditional. It wasn't the traditional practice of law. It was doing a lot of things ancillary to that. And then that kind of sparked the idea that we had about wanting to get into a room with lawyers on a regular basis to hear what they're doing that's different. If you weren't there tomorrow, you would be hearing me at some point harassing you to be a speaker, because you're what you do with patent strategy and with wargaming out strategies that are not traditional legal consulting is exactly what that committee is about. All right, enough about that. These Save Grove Hill signs that I'm seeing. All right, I want to ask you guys to talk about it as though I know nothing about it, and then I'm going to reserve my judgment until after I hear you guys talking about it, because I'm already being really judgmental about it and emotional about it, right? Based just on what I'm seeing on
We get right into the local issues, right, Steve? He butters us up, and then he wants to let us spin out of control on local issues.
So I don't care who goes first here, but assume that I have not read every single Village Block Club post on this, and that I don't know anything about it, and just give us a high level overview, 40,000 foot view of what the developer is trying to do and what is the controversy.
So there's a house called the Bancroft house that sits at the top of Grove Hill. It's on the left as you're going up the hill, so pretty much right out the door of your office. And there's you know it because there's a WPA stone wall that runs up the left side of Grove Hill, and the Bancroft house sits on that property.
Looks kind of like the Addams Family house a little bit, I thought.
It does.
Yeah, it's old.
It's a Victorian, you know, it is old. I'm not sure of the particulars, but I mean, I know it at a high level. I believe it's I think it's a 5 acre lot. Maybe it's a 3 acre lot. I actually don't know how big the lot is.
Well, it's two, isn't it? Isn't it like?
No, it's just one. It's one lot. It's one house it's one house and one building on one lot.
Okay.
And it's been for sale over the years a number of times. We've all sort of looked at it. I looked at it. I know Steve looked at it too.
I looked at it.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice house. It's going to take a ton of work, right? It's going to take a vision and a ton of work.
I wanted to buy it, and then I wanted to zip line to my office from it because it's.
You could do that.
I could totally do.
You could do that.
Okay, keep going.
So a developer whose name is Bob Vitt, and he's well known. He lives in town. He's well known here. I think he's from the area, and he built these condos over here on Orange, West Orange, right behind us, next to M Italian as you go up the hill out of town. And so, and then he ended up developing those condos. There's a bunch of controversy with, some of that development caused a house to slide down the hill. So Bob settled with the neighboring homeowners out of court and ended up building a new house up there on West. Would that be West Cottage?
West Cottage.
West
Yeah,
Cottage.
Three houses down from where I live.
Yeah. So that's where he lives. So he ends up buying the Bancroft house. And his plan now is he wants to move. Initially, he wanted to move the Bancroft house to a different spot on the lot in order to free up enough land to make 5 lots. So he'd have the Bancroft house on one lot and then 4 vacant lots. And he wanted to build 1 home up on West Summit, and then he wanted to build 3 homes with these 3 newly created lots right here on West Cottage.
So he's buying lots across the street from each other?
No. It's one big property. It's one big parcel.
Okay.
It's a square parcel.
Okay.
And the Bancroft house sits somewhere in the middle of it. He wanted to move the Bancroft house to the side, subdivide the lot into 5 lots. The Bancroft house would be 1 lot on West Summit, vacant. Then he'd build another house on West Summit, and then he wants to put 3 houses on West Cottage.
Okay.
What's the controversy? The controversy is there's a lot of controversies. One of it, which is what he wants to build looks very similar to what he built here on West Orange Street. And people are sort of up in arms about that not fitting the historical character of the neighborhood.
And those are those condos next to M Italian with the balconies that come out.
Right.
And people don't like that style.
Well, people do and people don't. I mean, clearly somebody likes it because those things sell. I mean, they're appreciating in value like crazy, and you could see, at the location. And I don't think they're for that. Now we're getting a little bit out of that, but my view of the world is everything's in context. So if you're going to drop a house on Church Street, which is a historic street that has certain look and feel, that's one set of facts. If you're going to build a house on Cleveland Street, that's a different look and feel, a different set of facts. So, I'm not one of those people that says, oh, those things are hideous, because they sit in they're sort of. But
the proposed buildings would look like those condos.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's the controversy.
Well, there's a lot of controversies. One controversy is, what are you doing?
What do you mean?
Well, these are all single-family homes on lots that are a certain size. Can somebody really just buy it, subdivide it, and start plopping, essentially, as I've described it, sort of like a cul-de-sac? We're turning everything, any land in Chagrin Falls that you can subdivide into the smallest lot that's permitted by our code. Should that be allowed? What's historic up there? The Bancroft house is certainly historic. Can he move it? Lately, he's been saying he wants to tear it down. I
was just going to say, I think I was at the ARB meeting when Mr. Vitt came in, when Bob came in, and changed his proposal from movement to demolition. So I think the only correction I'd say of Karl's, my understanding is that he wants to demolish the house now and then build 2 homes up there at 3 West Summit and then 3 homes down on West Cottage or townhouses. So I think the first controversy is, should he be able to demolish a home that's been judged to be historic? And then the second significant issue for everybody in the neighborhood is, should you be able to fit 5 homes on about a 1.5 acre lot that are out of character with the rest of the neighborhood?
Which is itself a separate issue, right?
So he proposed this plan to the Architectural Review Board.
Right.
And what happened then?
Well, what he did, he came to that meeting, and the stated proposal was movement of the house, as Karl had said.
Mm-hmm.
But verbally there at the meeting, he said he was converting it to a demolition request, which caused an audible gasp in the audience. And then there was just at that point, they couldn't do anything because he had made this verbal change at the last minute. They told him to go back, submit his demolition plans, and that ARB meeting has not happened yet. But there was a spirited discussion with the ARB members as well as the people in attendance now that they knew he wanted to demolish that. And I think, my takeaway from it was neither the ARB nor any of the audience members were in favor of his demolition.
But procedurally, where it stands right now is there isn't anything on the table. His application's been withdrawn, and he's got to bring it back with his actual intentions, which include demolishing the building.
Right, and I think that might have just been filed, is what I've heard. But in order to get demolition approval, that's one thing, and then the other thing is, can you get approval to build all these other townhomes on that piece of property?
Okay. So let's take those one at a time.
Well,
right?
there's more that we haven't talked about, right?
Oh,
so
all right.
So there's a hillside ordinance that he has to satisfy, right? So the village has a hillside ordinance that regulates when a slope is has certain properties. There are certain things you have to do in order to disturb it or build on it. And that's certainly implicated here. The irony of the whole hillside ordinance is the hillside ordinance was updated in large part because of the project that he did on West Orange, which caused a partial collapse of the hillside and a house sliding down the hill. I don't know, sliding down the hill is probably an overcharacterization, but certainly cracks that formed and made that house. I think they condemned it.
So he has not complied. People have opined that he has not complied with the hillside.
Well,
ordinance.
he hasn't, but I mean, he hasn't gotten to that point yet. He has to comply with the hillside ordinance.
Okay.
What he has said is that his plan to comply with the hillside ordinance is to take, I think 1,000 tons of dirt and move it or do something with it up there. So I don't know if that came from a formal presentation or what have you. So that's a huge issue because, obviously that's the same hill.
Got it.
And then the last issue I would say is the WPA wall. I think it's self historic, and the wall not only runs up the Grove Hill, but it runs along West Cottage. So in order to access the 3 lots that he wants to create, he's going to have to cut into that wall, which is itself historic.
Well, and am I right, and is my history right, that the reason it's historic is we're talking about the WPA, which was like an FDR era program during the Depression to create jobs and to build up cities and to get out of the Depression. So that's probably a 1920s era project that probably grandparents and great-grandparents from this area worked on under this Roosevelt era program, right?
I think it would be 30, 31. 30. I don't know. I mean, John Borisow knows all this stuff, but
so okay. Do you guys believe that the most controversial of those, and I counted 4 issues, is the demolition of the building itself?
I think so. I think it's hard to separate demolishing that and then also putting 4 or 5 houses that don't fit the neighborhood. It's hard to separate those two. But I think for a lot of the opposition, the initial thrust is, you cannot demolish this historic house.
My understanding is that when something has been designated as historic by whether it's the state or the federal government, whatever.
The village expert.
Right. It gets placed into a category that makes it very difficult, but not impossible to demolish. Some things still get demolished, even though they're designated historic, right? So in this case, under what circumstances could it be demolished?
Could I say something first?
Yeah.
I demolished a building that was judged to be historic by the village expert, just a few houses down. At 135 Division. I want to say, just for the record, because there's been some questioning about this, I'm dead set against this project. The fact that I was able to knock down a historic house and build the house that we have doesn't mean that I'm for the project. I've told Bob to his face I'm not for the project. But the one thing I wanted to throw out to see if we could talk about is something that is interesting in my mind, and that is, that Bancroft house sat there for an extended period of time. No one did anything to it. The owners didn't improve it. There were many, many people who could have bought that house, and no one chose to do it. And so there's that threshold question of, if Bob buys it, why all of a sudden is everyone interested now in saying, gee, Bob should be required to do A, B, and C? Shouldn't there, and this is rhetorical, but shouldn't our village have something in place to prevent this issue from ever occurring, so that we don't have developers who have the money and the wherewithal to buy something that other people passed on, who then want to demolish it? Can't we prevent this situation from happening at the outset so that we don't run into this problem as frequently as we do?
So, and what are you advocating for? Is this your idea, which I used to not love, but I start to love, is the designation, the understanding that I'm going to say it this way. I think your idea at some point was catalog all the houses in Chagrin Falls and make sure everybody knows whether it's historic or not. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about
That's one part. I think there's a two-part thing here. There has to be a covenant added to these homes that when someone purchases them and lives in them or not, they are required to keep them up to a certain standard.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then the second is, and I know the Historical Society would be more than willing to do this, but a reasonable and relevant inventory of truly historic homes here in Chagrin Falls, so that they're on a list. And if you want to buy them, going in, first of all, the person who has them should have kept it up, up to speed and new roof and so forth. But second of all, if you buy them, flat out, you can't demolish it.
But that goes back to, first of all, are you sure isn't there currently a system in place, and isn't it in fact working right now, in the sense that he's got to jump through these hoops?
There's criteria, but I got through them.
So Chapter 11, now I'm going to be Rain Man on a Chagrin Falls code, right? But you guys could have guessed that. So Chapter 1146 is our historical guideline, historical preservation regulations. And so we have multiple definitions for why a property would be deemed historic. Age is one of them. I was not on BZA when your project came through, so I wasn't sure why. I don't know the facts of what your house, how it qualified, but over 100 years old, over 50 years old, and meets some certain architectural criteria. And then what you said, Alex, which is placed on a National Historic Register, been depicted as historic in various things. And then the Bancroft house will probably qualify under all of those, right? I mean, I think pictures of Chagrin Falls from the 1900s show the Bancroft house prominently featured in its current form, and et cetera, et cetera. So notwithstanding that, you can demolish an historic home if you can show that there's it's unsafe, it's deteriorated to the point where you can't, it's a safety hazard. And there's a provision in the code that doesn't allow someone to just sit on a house and let it deteriorate and then demolish it and say, oh, it's dilapidated.
In other words, intentionally make it unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. But so, I mean, it sounds like, let me reframe.
And there's one more, by the way, let me just get out this. So the one more, and I think the way most people proceed is, you can show that the cost to renovate or repair the house, the current value of the house plus the cost to repair the house is greater than the fair market value after you do the work. So you bring in experts that show that, and I assume that's how you were able to proceed with your house with Fountain.
It is.
And so that's how you could be able to, I think your original question was, how could he demolish the house if it's historic? That's how. Our code allows it.
What was that equation again? The cost to repair it has to, say that again?
Present value plus cost to repair
Right.
is greater than the fair market value after the repair.
So if you buy a house for $200,000 and the village does their own assessment and says you would need $600,000 to bring it up to just average condition. So that's $800,000 total. But the fair market value when you're done with all that is $5,000.
Got it.
You can't force someone to do something that's economically not feasible.
Right. That which makes sense.
And that's how we were successful in getting the house that we had demolished in a new house.
So apply these rules that are in place right now. Take out the Save Grove Hill signs. Take out I'll say hysteria, right? Take out the emotion, okay? We have a process. We have code. Can the developer here make an argument successfully that he should be allowed to demolish the property and put up his condos while complying with the existing code? Is that possible?
Well, the first part is I think the demolishing of the Bancroft house he has a good argument for, because that house has been left in disrepair. And I think if the village does their own assessment, I can't say how it would come out, but I think it would be very close to exceeding the fair market value of the house. So that's one issue.
Yeah.
And that's why I proposed some of those changes that I think could prevent that from happening for the good of the village.
What you were just suggesting, Steve, is putting a registry together that basically says, hey, if you buy this house, you're not tearing it down.
Can't tear
Under
it down.
no circumstances can you tear this house down.
Right.
Right?
I mean, that's hard, right? I mean, we do, we sort of do, like, and you know, the one thing you said, Steve, earlier that I think is, and it comes up on social media, and you have you hear people making the following argument. Look, this house was on the market over the years for how long? And anyone could have bought it, right? None of you bought it. Why is everybody freaking out now, right? And so my answer to that is there is an agreement that we all make when we move to Chagrin Falls. And that agreement is, it's sort of implicit. We are moving here because we like the look and feel of Chagrin Falls, and there's a code that protects that look and feel, right? And
but I think those are two different things. Personally, I think that think about it. Look and feel is a very subjective. Some people can disagree whether something fits into the look and feel. The code is very objective, right? And that's where I was going back to take it back to the original question, right? So if he can, under the code, demolish the Bancroft house, right, based on the market value and the costs. The other issue he's going to have is fitting in his new property into the look and feel concept, right? That's fundamentally what we're talking about, right?
And I think he's going to need easements. He's going to need passage by council of some allowances to allow him to do this, because it's only about a 1.5 acre piece of property.
Yeah, I think that's right, because it's R160 up there, so the lots only have to be 60 feet wide.
Yeah, so he's going to need some significant variances to be able to do this. And that's where I think, if you ask me, the Save Grove Hill efforts should be really focused on. I can understand, trying hard not to have that house demolished, but I will just say I think it's going to be a toss-up. But where I will dig in for sure, because I just live a few houses down from there, and I don't think it should happen in the village. You can't put 5 townhomes
I totally agree.
on a piece of property that is in the middle of a neighborhood with single-family homes.
Yeah.
Because of the look and feel?
Because of the look and feel, and then I think it's also just heightened by the location of it being at the top of Grove Hill.
Completely.
I mean, it's literally kind of the crown jewel up there, and you see it from town, and what you would see would instantly be out of character with the entire feel of our village.
And that's why it's so disappointing, right? I mean, Steve and I are aligned on everything he just said. And the thing that's disappointing to me is, and I think I said this on social media, if not, I should, like, I expect this kind of stuff from a guy who's not from here, right? He's us. He's one of us. I see him in the morning. He goes to the same coffee shop I do. He lives here. Like, that's where I get a little bit irritated, because I feel like I would expect this from some carpetbagger developer who's not from here. But when it happens to somebody, look, dude, you live here, you get it.
What is there is a very real possibility that I'm going to be, what's his name?
Bob Vitt. I went out to lunch with him last month, and we spoke about this.
I'm almost certainly going to be asking him to come on the podcast and give his side of it, and I would welcome either or both of you guys to join in that conversation, because I can't wait to have it. What is his best argument?
Well, when I sat with him, first of all, I was very honest with him. I told him I was against the project. I was going to be against the project. I told him and warned him that there was going to be a lot going against him. And I will say this, Bob's a nice guy. He's a neighbor of mine. He's a very smart guy. I respect the fact that he works really hard. I'll disagree with Karl a little bit in the sense that he's from here. Bob's a developer and a businessman at heart. He has a number of homes, one of them which is here. So I think he enjoys living here, but I don't necessarily think that he's kind of like one of us in the sense that the things that we love about Chagrin Falls are that important to him. I think it's a really nice place to live. He certainly likes people here, but what he looks at this is really just from a business standpoint. He sees a piece of property that he could buy for $5-something and turn a profit on it, and that's what he's most interested in. And the thing I shared with some of the people from Save Grove Hill and some of the neighbors that live around him that I know well are that, Bob told me he's been through this type of situation many, many times. It doesn't scare him at all. It doesn't bother him at all. And he's just going to push ahead and see what he can do.
Karl, for this to work for him, assuming he can get past the sort of the technical requirements, like the hillside ordinance, for example, right? To get through the aesthetic look and feel part of this.
Or the variances.
Right.
Setback variances.
Right, but those are technical, right? Those are right,
but they're pretty significant.
Those are objective, right? I want to focus in, because the part of this that I think is most interesting to me, right? And I know that this came up too by that paper factory area too, right?
Sure.
The part that I find most fascinating about these kinds of controversies is the subjectivity of it, right? What is part of the look and feel to one person is just an anathema, is just an eyesore, is just like, no way does that fit in, right? And as so, and actually, Steve, I mean, I think that I'd love to get your thoughts on this, just from your own personal journey of this, because you dealt with this, right?
I hear comments about our house all the time.
So here's the thing, right? And I'm a lawyer. We're all three of us are lawyers, and I have clients, and I've dealt with land use law and real estate issues like this. And so much of it just depends on making people feel something, feel good, right? Feel good about you as a person, feel good about the look, right? So a lot of this depends on who you can win over to your side, right? There are personality contests here, right? When you deal with subjectivity, when you deal with different people's opinions about what looks and feels good, you start getting into these sort of nebulous areas that they're just not quantifiable. So what does he have to do to make the ARB and then the village council believe that this does have the look and feel of Chagrin Falls such that it would be acceptable to build his project there?
I have some strong opinions on this, but I'll defer to you, Karl. But I'd like to say something afterwards.
You're asking me to sit here and help this guy, right? Because I sort of know the code backwards and forwards, and but my advice to him would be, don't be so damn greedy, there are ways you can do things around here to meet the look and feel requirement, right? But taking the condos that are on West Orange that were themselves controversial, and what a lot of people don't realize is those condos got built in part because the village owned that land, and there was a development agreement with Mr. Vitt to develop that property. So he got way more variances and way more rope than he would have had those unique set of facts not existed, right? So, but what he's trying to do is take those and plop them on arguably the most historic piece of property in this town. And so what I would say to him is, if you really want to do something, with the Bancroft house, put something in there that looks like Chagrin Falls, that adds to the architectural landscape that we have and complements what we have. But taking a bunch of, I sort of characterize them as Tremont condos. I think I use that in a different property, but plopping that and on Grove Hill is not going to advance the ball. So I think.
And to be clear, and again, this is subjective, and you're not on village council or ARB, so you wouldn't say, would you, that there isn't a set of condos that would fit the look and feel? You're not saying no condos should go there. You're just saying the condos he wants to put there.
Well, I'm characterizing them as condos, right? Just because they look like the condos that are down there, but they're actually three. I think
they are single family.
He's proposing 3 single family homes.
They just look like those condos.
They look like those condos. And to Steve's point, he's got them jammed in there in a way that he's going to need height variances and area variances and all kinds of variances. So he's got, it's just, I don't know. I'm completely opposed to the project. For me, obviously, it all comes down to the code, and I hope to God our code prevents it.
But he could make you happy if you were on the council and on the ARB. He could make you happy by putting 3 homes in there.
No. He could. I don't think that our code allows you to take a 1.3 acre lot in the most historic place in Chagrin Falls, carve it up into the smallest lots, put a cul-de-sac in there, and even if you put 5 Victorian homes in there that everyone agrees would be the most architecturally significant buildings in Chagrin Falls, I just don't think our code allows that. And so, no, there's nothing that I think he should be. I just don't think he should be allowed to do that. And I hope our code prevents him from doing the project. But I mean, as Steve said, he's a developer and he's plowing forward because profits is sort of an opportunist, and he saw the house for sale and decided this is what he wanted to do.
So, Steve, I want to hear your answer to the question and I'll defer to you, either before or after. I would love it if you just said a little bit about what your own personal journey, give a little context from your experience. Again, either before or after answering that question.
No, I'll start with that just because I think it is something that everyone needs to think about when they get involved in these things. When my wife and I bought 135 Division Street, we did it very quickly because it was a good opportunity. We didn't buy it because we wanted to knock that house down. We didn't really know. So it was really like, do we buy it today or not? So we bought it. And then I approached the village and just said, listen, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Whatever the requirements or ordinances say I have to do, I'll do. If I have to, take this structure, improve it, and build onto it because I have a larger family, I will. If I get permission from you to knock it down, I'll do that. And so we worked hand in hand with the village. And in the end, they had a meeting with us and said, listen, if you try to fix this thing up, it's going to cost way more than it's worth. So we give you permission to knock it down. And so we did. What people don't know, though, is you can't actually get your backhoes to knock it down until the ARB approves what you're going to build there in place of it. And so we had an architect who's here in town and on the ARB that obviously recused himself, but he put together a house that I think fits very well into the architecture of the village. And so they approved that. And so we knocked it down, and then we built a house that I think fits in. What I think is unfortunate is some of the subjective comments and opinions that we get. People say things like, we built a McMansion. our house is too big. I did everything by the book and by the rules, and I do care about this village and what we put up. What upsets me is when people let emotion get into it or name calling and things like that. I think it's very hurtful. And so those types of things I am sensitive to with other people. And initially I was with Bob Vitt in this project. And so when I take that to the Bancroft house, I say to myself, look, if Bob bought that and he was able to illustrate that the Bancroft house should be demolished by using the ordinances.
Sure.
Okay. That's on us as a village. That's not Bob being some mean guy.
Right.
We as a village either didn't get together and buy it, or no one in the village bought it. The person didn't fix it up and keep it in good standing. Like, I don't dislike Bob Vitt for doing that, and I don't think any of us should. And if he got permission to knock it down and then he built a house that the ARB said, okay, this fits, I don't think we should yell at Bob Vitt or name call Bob Vitt or say we don't like the color, or it's a McMansion. That kind of stuff I think is rude, and that kind of stuff is kind of un-American to me. Like, we live in Chagrin Falls, I get it, but it's still the United States of America. We have a lot of freedoms, and what you may like may not be what I like, but the ARB said it was okay to build, and so I think it's appropriate. One last thing, but when Bob took this project and said, you know what, I'm going to knock it down, now I'm going to stuff 5 homes on there, different story.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
That's when it changed for me, and that's when I'm dead set against it, because that is not subjective. Now he's going to need variances for things that are in place to prevent this very thing from happening. Now you're not playing by the rules, and those rules are in place to kind of protect us all, and that's where I think the focus should be. On social media, I've just said, stop with the emotion.
Yeah.
It doesn't do you any good.
No,
Stop with the hysteria. The hysteria doesn't do you any good. And don't vilify Bob as a human being. Yeah. He's still a nice guy. He's just trying to do something that he thinks is going to be profitable, but we need to enforce those ordinances to stop him.
So it's funny, right? Social media, nobody understands. Nobody really follows the zoning code or the building codes or anything until it affects, a house that they care about. And then everyone's an expert, but they really don't get into it. But it's funny, as you were talking, Steve, it occurred to me that I was on council and I was on BZA when you built your house. And because when you're on council, you get, you run into people all over who want to talk to you about whatever. And I heard the McMansion comment about your house. And I had unique perspective because I'm on BZA. So if somebody needs a variance for something, an area variance, I see that all the time. I didn't see you.
No. Because
your property was, you were the opposite of a McMansion. You had enough property to build the size house that you wanted. And I think that people use, to your point about name calling in shorthand, any big house is like, oh, it's a McMansion. And you're like, no, it turns out they have 5 acres, so that's the size house that fits on there,
This is a great segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you guys, which is a question about rhetoric. But before we get off this, Save Grove Hill, is it a real group?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
So this is a group of people that got together and said, let's make a bunch of signs. Let's call ourselves Save Grove Hill.
Well, well, Steve and I both know them all, but so they're the neighbors. Yeah. It's all the neighboring homeowners who, for a long time, and I was on council when this process started. So they've been in contact with me almost throughout this whole process, but their first inkling that something was going on was seeing Bob Vitt personally over there, with somebody doing soil tests. And this is, a year ago, maybe. And so they've been following the process. And so what they're trying to do with Save Grove Hill is essentially raise awareness to what's going on. And their concerns are almost exactly the concerns that Steve articulated, right? Is, you can't, and my concern too, you can't just plop 5 houses in the middle of my neighborhood that's going to change the historic character of everything.
So Save Grove Hill began on social media. It gained members. They've had formal meetings. They've sent petitions around that have garnered, I think, well over 1,000 signatures. And then they've created these signs that people are putting in their yard. And what their hope is that people participate in government, attend the meetings, and voice the feelings that they have to the mayor, to the ARB, and the council. And I think I applaud it because it's people getting involved in their community.
And it's all good dialogue, right? I mean, we have a code in place. You can either do it or you can't do it. And it's interesting when people take it personally and start screaming, yelling, and waving their hands. And I don't love that about it. What I do love about it is a community that comes together to evaluate under the code the merits of a project. And I love it when people participate. And so it's all good.
Yeah, I think that it's a great example of free exercise of speech and expression. I love that. That's what I love most about this country. It's fantastic. When I came to work that first day, right, and the Save Grove Hill signs are all over the place, I'm like, I started thinking kind of the same thing that you were talking about, Steve, which is like, all right, is this going to be a situation where this guy actually does check all the boxes and gets approval, and then he's going to be vilified because he didn't, because it was either that or Save Grove Hill. In other words, he is now the antithesis. He is the destroyer of Grove Hill, right? And so that was the particularly, and we're going to talk about this right now, how inflammatory and vitriolic people are on social media about emotional issues. You know, that was my concern. Like, I would actually love it, and I don't think it's on the signs. Stop me if I'm wrong. If it was Save Grove Hill, go to this website for more information. You know what I mean?
That's on there.
Oh, it is? There's a website on those signs?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, then I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But that's the, like, facts.
You know, the Grove Hill that we really should have saved was Tim Bando's restaurant, because that place was fabulous. And not a week goes by that I don't miss that place.
Okay, good. Well, then, I mean, I love a good, healthy debate. I love facts. The vitriol drives me crazy, like that surrounding our man in D.C. right now. So today, well, by the time people hear this, I think the impeachment trial will be over. But it is getting underway, and it is just the most recent in a years-long odyssey that I can't help but believe that, I don't know, part of me thinks it's like Putin is just kind of like laughing his way to the bank right now. He's like, I love it. I love what I've created over here. The other part of me thinks that the day where decisions were made based on facts is gone and might be gone permanently.
Yeah.
Right. Everything is fluid. There's no reality. It is just story. It is narrative. It is how can I push your buttons?
Totally agree. I mean, we've all become marionettes. Yeah. Right. They just, you know, and we're controlled by so many different masters. It's crazy. And I, you know, I always said this when I was on council. Like, I'm a process guy. The process to me, we're all process guys. We're trial lawyers, right? I mean, the process is the process. The way that the narrative around this is being controlled and the way that the process is being, in my view, controlled and then mischaracterized to a public that just doesn't dig into anything.
Right.
It is really, it scares me to no end. I mean, this is legitimate checks and balances that, you know, we see. Yeah. Just people are treating it like it's a meme on social media, and that's the level of thought that people give it, and it terrifies me.
So let me ask you guys a question, right? And the question has a presumption associated with it, right? The presumption is that we can all agree that voting and other decisions these days are more the product of marketing and narratives and sound bites and less a product of reason and logic and facts, right? Can we agree on that generally?
Well, yeah, but there's only two teams.
Okay.
You got the Browns and the Steelers.
Do you believe that state of affairs can be walked back, or is it now impossible to put the toothpaste back in the bottle, and we will forever be a country where elections and where decisions at any level, federal, state, or local, are going to be driven predominantly by who's got more money, who's got better marketing, who can push emotional buttons more? What do you guys think?
I think until there's some substantive changes made to our system, it's here to stay.
I don't disagree.
Because, you saw some of this with President Obama, whether you liked him or you didn't. The discourse was terrible. He got, fought tooth and nail. And a lot of the fighting and really the terrible part of politics started when he was in office. To me, I think the substantive changes that would have to occur, number one, the Joe average, anybody out there in the street would need to understand Citizens United, the Supreme Court case. It changed everything about politics. I don't think the majority of people know what that case is and what it means. So they'd have to understand that and understand how that really exploded money in politics. And it's changed everything because now PAC money really ruins everything. And then I firmly believe until we can somehow get it so that when you're going to Washington, you're going there for a temporary reason, you're going there to serve the country and then leave and go back and work a normal job again, nothing's going to change. So is that term limits? Maybe. But until things like that occur, I don't see it changing. I think it's just going to stay and get worse.
Yeah, and that, or there has to be a big catastrophe, because this is not, what we have. I mean, okay. So I grew up in a Republican Catholic family in Wisconsin, and we were very socially conscious, raised to be very socially conscious, and we were essentially pro-choice Republicans. And if LGBT was an issue back then, we would have been 100% in favor of LGBT rights. Those things don't exist anymore. You don't have Republicans who are pro-choice, and you don't have Republicans who are like, they sign up to be Steelers fans and they're Steelers fans, like, on everything, which is ironic, right? Because the pro sports analogy to me works well, because I'm a huge Packer fan. I dislike the Chicago Bears. I love everything about the Green Bay Packers, but I question what the Packers do. Like, what are you doing? You can't do that. That's a crazy play, right? Yet we have people that will not question their political party. Their party tells them that this is the answer. That's the answer for all purposes.
Well, so right now somewhere there is a constitutional historian listening to this podcast, I hope, who's saying, well, yeah, but go back to, 1783, and when John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were debating whether to have a strong federal government or a weak federal government, they were calling each other jackals, incestuous, sleeping with prostitutes. The rhetoric back then was horrible, and it has been ever since. And there have always been two teams, right? And so today is no different. It's just more amplified, right?
Well, yes and no, right? So back to what Steve said. So what happened when Obama became president? And I trace this all the way back to the, what was that crazy thing that Newt Gingrich came up with in like the mid-90s? Contract with America. The contract with America, in my view, coupled with Citizens United, is responsible, coupled with Facebook and coupled with Fox News. These are all my usual punching bags, right? Those 4 or 5 things combined to put us where we are. The contract with America, at a high level, basically was a contract with Republican congressional leaders to sign up for all these things and not negotiate on any of them, okay? You get to Obama's presidency and you have an entire branch of government that came out and said publicly, we're going to do everything we can to oppose this man's policies. That's not compromise. That's not how the government is supposed to work. So yeah, the founders were arguing about whatever they were doing. I don't disagree with your characterization of any of it, but it's all compromise, right? There's no, they came up with something that was done through compromise. It wasn't one thing that got jammed through. And we've lost that art. And to me, as a kid who grew up in Wisconsin as a Republican, but is now, I don't think I'm hugely liberal. I am on social issues. I think I'm more moderate on, you can ask anyone on council. I mean, I was small government all the way. I'm like, why are we regulating that? Right. That was my thing. So I'm in the middle somewhere, but to me, it's so foreign that, and as a former legislator, you got to compromise on stuff. And we sent people down to Washington, to pick up on another great point that Steve made. We sent people down to Washington and they stay down there, and they take super PAC money, and they get emboldened on things, and they refuse to compromise, and they refuse to govern. They're just we're at a stalemate, and they have no. And to take it a step further, the way you ungridlock the system is you have to answer to your people back home, right? But the people that are down there are in gerrymandered districts that have no incentive to deal with their people back home because they couldn't lose an election if they tried.
Well, so put a pin in that. I want to come right back to that.
Which part of those 87 things?
The gerrymandering part, because I think that goes hand in hand with the question of whether you need an electoral college, which will never permit the Senate to truly represent
the electoral
population.
But the electoral college is at the presidential level, right? I'm talking about if you look at Jim Jordan's district or Dave Joyce's district, Jim Jordan couldn't lose an election. I mean, who's the senator, the congressman from the west side of Cleveland? Her district goes west side of Cleveland, huge yellow Democratic thing, goes all along the lake, all the way to Toledo to pick up those Democrats. It makes no sense because you have no. You just have no. We're so polarized at every level, and it starts with that.
Do you think that we should have an electoral college?
Yes.
Why?
I think the framers were smart in including it. I think it's worked for as long as we've had it. You know, granted, I think the Trump-Clinton election made it hurt. You know, but overall it works. I think the problem isn't so much the electoral college, but as I listen to you guys talk, think of the foundation of the problems that we're having, whether it's gerrymandering or whether it's gridlock in D.C. It's because the people aren't there to do what's best for the country. Mm-hmm. They're there to get reelected and continue what they believe is right for just their party.
Completely
so there's no, I guess, trying to make deals and do things.
Right. It's not representative, right? The point.
They're not doing what's best for the country.
But I can't get past, Steve, why we keep having elections where the popular vote is disregarded in favor of an electoral college vote. The electoral college, to me, made a lot of sense when you had 13 colonies, right? And you entrusted these electors, right, in air quotes, to make decisions for their entire colony. And at that time, their colony was like its own completely separate country. Today, I just can't justify it. I don't know why we still have popular votes disregarded.
Well, I think you're right about some of the weaknesses in the Electoral College, but I think the biggest check is so that states like California and New York, whether they're traditionally liberal or conservative, however they are, those regions can't sway an entire election because somebody in Wisconsin doesn't want to feel like their vote means nothing just because there's a ton of people in California who are very liberal. And so I think the Electoral College does do a nice job of balancing out the country so that we can all be a country that gets along, but we also realize that we're a large geographic country with diverse opinions.
Well, if I had a magic wand, the Electoral College would be like 15th or 27th on my list, right? That's not the issue.
I agree.
Like Citizens United is a enormous issue.
I totally agree.
Yeah, okay.
I totally agree. Yeah, no, I just I don't know. To me, I have a visceral reaction to the popular vote being disregarded. I think that you deal with the disproportionate populations issue in the House of Representatives, right? If you can get the gerrymandering part right.
Gerrymandering is a huge issue.
Right. The other thing, by the way, Karl, that I would add to the list, well, both of you, that I would add to the list of sort of watershed BS things that have happened that have polarized society. I mean, and it's I don't think it was intentional. I don't think it was like like a conspiracy, but I think the Cold War ends up, and the 60s, right, and the hippie movement ends up turning, you're either pro-communist or you're not. Right. And that starts pulling people into these camps. Right. You're either for, a strong national security or you're for, the hippies. I think that over time when it was truly us versus them in an existentialist way, mm-hmm. It was very easy to point liberals as the anti-security, pro-communist, pro-Reds party and the Republicans as the national security. They're here to keep us safe party. And now you're really polarized.
Let's talk about irony, right? Which is hard not to talk about when you're talking about national politics.
Yeah.
The irony is that I agree with, except for the characterizing my hippie brothers as, commies or whatever, but, there's a certain truth to that. But flipping the other side of your argument, that the Republicans were the rah-rah USA, national security, we're going to defeat those Russians, right? That's exactly right. That's who that party is. They are there's nobody chanting louder during the 1980 Olympic hockey than the Republicans chanting USA, USA, right? And now you see those guys wearing shirts that say better Russian than Democrat. Think about that for a second, because they don't. I mean, the irony, it's, so I don't even know where we are, but I have a thought on anything, right? But we are fundamentally misinformed as a country, and what's going to get us out of this, in my view, is people, the general public, waking up and realizing that they've been the product, that they're lied to and manipulated, and it's not just me, not just that, it's all of us. We are the product on Facebook. Facebook wants to serve us up content that makes us have an enjoyable time and come back to Facebook. And media outlets are the same way, and every website that you go to is the same way. And so there's an incentive, and anyone who sells advertising has an incentive to aggregate their listeners or their users in a way that they can sell that to advertisers.
Have you guys seen The Big Hack on Netflix?
No.
Watch that.
No.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
It is fantastic, and it should be required viewing for every American.
I mean, if you read anything about those data companies that were...
Well, that's what it's about, Cambridge Analytica.
Oh, the Cambridge... So there you go.
Dude,
I've read articles, and it's terrifying.
Can you guys do me a favor tonight? Go watch that.
I can't do it tonight, but I'm in.
All right. It is fantastic, and you cannot walk away from it without feeling like you are just a number in these giant algorithms that are. I mean, you talked about marionettes. It is,
but that's what's gonna. That is the, you started off this discussion by saying, how are we getting out of this, right? And we're all aligned on sort of the issues here. But to me, the inelastic, whatever, I'm the engineer, I should know this, event is going to be when the public finally realizes that we are all being manipulated.
I don't think that'll ever happen, Karl. I think that you're speaking about the public as if it's monolithic, and a majority of us, I'd like to think a majority of us already believe that. I think that the problem is that it's the tail wagging the dog. I think that there is. I'm glad you brought up Citizens United, Steve. There is, when you allow corporations to be treated as people for purposes of election funding, and whoever's got the most money can hire the best marketers. We are talking monkeys to them, man. We are just like people that you can, you push this button and you make him vote this way, and you push this button and he stays home that day and doesn't even show up. I mean, I don't know that there will come a day when we can all agree that we're being screwed, right? I mean, the three of us notwithstanding. I'm going to take this opportunity to take a very short break. And when we come back, we're going to bring the politics discussion back to the local level and talk about council, talk about school funding, talk about fun stuff, and then it's all about the lightning round. All right? We'll be right back. Hey, folks. Alex Gertzberg here. I'm CEO of the Gertzberg Law Firm and Cover My Six, and I wanted to share with you something we figured out long ago. The biggest value lawyers can give their clients is not getting them out of trouble. It's helping them avoid emergencies before they blow up. That's what Cover My Six is all about. To help you see why we're so confident in this audit, we're offering a no-cost, no-obligation business vulnerability assessment. My business lawyers will meet with you in person and go over your customer contracts, your employee handbooks, and other key legal documents, and identify any legal minefields they see. We'll also give you guidance on how to stop those minefields from destroying your business. We know lawsuits cost businesses far more than money, but we also know that most of them are entirely preventable, and we know how to stop them before they start. Go to covermy6.com to see if you qualify and sign up today. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show. We are back. Steve, you just asked a really interesting question, and ask it again.
Is there anything that we can do to allow us to have political discussions on Facebook or in person that aren't so upsetting and immediately people get angry and people are unfollowing people and fighting and not liking somebody? It's just sad to see.
What do you think, Karl?
Well, I mean, I think he's talking about me because I'm really good at that, right? But
I wasn't, but
I mean, I don't know. It's a hard question because, and I think, you're right, man. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
People talk about not being able to, and around the holidays, not being able to talk to this person, that person. And, so I have an interesting story. There was a guy named Ken Johnson. I don't know if you guys know Ken, but he lives in Florida, and then he lives on Miles Road half the time, right? So he's retired. I don't know what he did for a living, but we started a huge controversy on Village Block Club because he's the guy that his Trump sign kept getting stolen in 2016.
Yeah,
so
I remember this.
He put a wood step ladder out there with a 4x8 sheet of plywood and spray painted "Go Trump" or whatever he said on the thing, right? And I was on Village Council at the time, and I remember where I was in Toronto at a meeting, and I saw that. I'm like, you got to ignore that, dude, because nothing good can happen from you commenting on that, right? But after a while, I was just like, it's like a moth to a flame for me, right? I got to have some comment. So I made some comment about, it being perfectly appropriate to me that a Trump supporter would use a 4x8 sheet of plywood and some spray paint he found in the garage, yada, yada, yada. And Ken was pissed at me. And so when I got home from Toronto, I mean, at that time I lived on Church Street, so it was like maybe 10 houses from him, and I grabbed some beers out of my fridge, and I went down to his house, knocked on the door, and at first he's like, what the F are you doing here? And I'm like, dude, we're going to have a conversation about this, right? So we sat down, and two guys have nothing in common, and we had a political conversation. I posted about it, and we did not avoid any issues. We went right at everything. And what we found is that we're way more alike than we are different. And on local issues, we're aligned on everything. And so I think, to me, the problem is and we talked, in the earlier segment about Citizens United and how bad it is, and it manifests itself on Facebook because that's where all this PAC money is pushing messages at people. And you have all these things, and whether they're Russian bots or just setting that aside, people are putting big money into influencing people's behavior on social media, and that in and of itself is part of the problem. We need to get back to front porches and coffee shops and breakfast joints, and that's where you find the common ground. When you're 3 sentences on Facebook about some issue, you're not going to find common ground.
I think that people forget that they feel about their party or their political viewpoint the same way some people feel about their kids and
about the Green Bay Packers, man.
Fair enough. And me saying I think Trump is an idiot when I'm talking to a Trump supporter makes him think that I'm calling him an idiot. Okay, like how could you vote for this idiot, right? And similarly, right, when I've severely restricted my not my Facebook use, but my Facebook scrolling, right? Like, so I just go to my notifications now, and I want to know what, I get really specific about what I let into my consciousness, right? But so when I see somebody putting something up about, Hillary being, like a child molester or something like that, or whatever, or about Obama, or about, sometimes, especially if it's somebody I respect, I feel like they're like making fun of me, and those are actually very poor examples. Like, I disregard shit like that. But I think that my short answer to your question, Steve, is that, yes, I would agree that being able to have difficult conversations at the coffee shop and at the bar and on the front porch, great place to start. But dialing back the rhetoric so that it's not Trump's an idiot, it's this decision is not good for the country. Here's why.
And here's the problem, right? So you're right about all that. The problem is that social media, and don't you love how Crandall asked this question? Because he knows there's no answer and he wants to watch us spin out of control for 10 minutes, both of us, like stepping all over ourselves, right?
He is the puppet master.
He is. He's like a trial lawyer. Watch this question. But my point is that it's social media that's the issue, because when those discussions come up, Alex, that you're describing, it's because somebody shared something from a different site.
Right.
When people sit down to craft something on Facebook, they don't say stuff that's whack.
Yeah.
Because they're not whack people. But what they do is their feed is filled with stuff that's their echo chamber of misinformation, and they share it.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be incendiary, and it's designed to be misleading. And that's where, and I do it all the time, when I say, when I go after my friends from college, and I'm like, bro, you got to inform yourself, right? And I actually, a rare occasion, just a couple days ago, I posted something about the impeachment. I usually reserve my condescending tone for other people's walls where I comment on their stuff and make fun of their friends. And I rarely do it on my own wall. But I did the other day, and what I said was, if you want to have an opinion on the impeachment, you have to read the articles of impeachment. And I'm constantly in these discussions with people who haven't read the articles of impeachment. They're just repeating sound bites from a media outlet or wherever they get their news that that's in their head. And I'm like, if you want to be informed on this topic, this is one. Yeah. There are a lot of topics where it's hard to find the source. There are a lot of topics where you have to go do a bunch of research to be actually informed on it. This is a classic example of where there's a single source that you can go to, and it will tell you what's going on, and nobody has read it.
And by the way, the alternative is you're getting it from Fox News or from MSNBC, right?
Or Occupy Democrats, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, choose your filter.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and then, and my point to everyone was, I don't understand how you can consistently, on topic after topic, let somebody else do your thinking for you and tell you what your opinion is. But all of y'all do it, whether you're on this side or that side.
I was just telling Steve in the hallway there, I generally don't like being cynical. I like being positive and optimistic, but national political discourse, I am totally cynical about.
Well, I've got two things that I think may help. One of them maybe sounds a little controversial, but look, I'll start off with, we're all free to do what we want in the United States. But I've always thought that you got to ask yourself, are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your family? Okay. Are you knocking the ball out of the park and contributing in your workplace? In other words, not only taking care of your family financially, but paying taxes and doing all those things. If you've got all that in order, then I think you can open your mouth and start criticizing and things like that. Until you got that other stuff in order, in my opinion, pipe down and get things in order. Okay? And then the second thing that I've noticed when I have some discussion with individuals who are opposite me politically is, you really try to understand their viewpoint and you try to empathize with them. And, it's not a bad idea sometimes to say, like, listen, I see your point about what you're saying about Trump and some of the economic successes. Maybe in your mind it's a little bit more exaggerated, but nonetheless, you can empathize with them a little bit. And I think the conversation goes much better. I think right now, no one's listening and everyone's screaming. And that's not going to get anything done. Agreed. Those are my two pieces of advice.
All right. There is a really great book out there called The Art of Thinking Clearly, and it's all about cognitive biases. To your point just now, Steve, about getting, I guess both of you guys made it, getting to the facts and being unemotional. Our opinions about things are so easily manipulated, that if you're not aware of how the manipulation is happening, you're just a mouthpiece. It's the information that you're receiving is flowing through you and out of your mouth in a way that you're not really intending.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started the podcast here by focusing on very personal, individual wins. We sort of zoomed out into local politics, out into federal politics. We're going to zoom a little bit back in to local, and then we're going to end with personal stuff again. We all have kids. Yours, we've got kids in Kenston and Chagrin Falls between the three of us.
Solon.
Oh, is that right?
No,
He's
my
got
kids.
Solon.
Oh, you're.
kids go
Oh, that's. I knew that. All right, Solon, Chagrin Falls, Kenston, three great schools.
Yeah.
Is Kenston a good school?
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's the best of the
My
three.
wife
but
went there.
Whatever.
So
By the way, folks may be listening to this for the first time. If you go back a couple episodes, Molly and I interviewed Nancy Santilli and Bob Hunt, and that was a great interview. Anytime we get those two superintendents in the room, it is just fantastic conversation. So I'd encourage you to check that out. But all right, our kids all play sports, right? What do yours play, Steve?
Lacrosse and basketball right now.
What do yours play?
Didn't your daughter play soccer?
And cross country, track.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Soccer? Didn't your daughter play soccer?
Yeah, but she's graduated now.
Well, right,
she's on to Miami. So.
Yeah.
That's in addition to the 5 a.m. workouts that you're posting about
Right.
with your boy. Jeez, man,
Max.
make me feel lazy.
I got to meet this Max because I think that's a forced smile.
Max is.
I mean, when his grandfather was there, I can see him wanting to do that. But he's like, Dad, what are you doing? I mean, I can't get my teenagers out of bed before noon.
It's
so
all Max.
He's crushing it.
I have soccer, tennis, lacrosse, and track.
Okay, mine are wrestling, soccer, lacrosse, and now debate team. I don't know if that counts, but I'm throwing it in.
Wonder where that came from.
Yeah. Coaching. How do you feel, Steve?
So I've got something I'd like to propose to the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. And I mean no slight against any coach that's at Chagrin Falls. I'm talking globally, but I think this would be a great idea. I think that any head coach of a varsity sport should be given 10 years. And then I think at the end of that 10 years, the Board of Education and the athletic director should do a comprehensive evaluation taking into account players' feedback, parents' feedback, whether their kid is gone from the program or not. The reason why I think that should occur is because sometimes you get these coaches who stay for 15, 20, 25 years. I think there's certainly advantages to that, but I think there's advantages to having new blood, fresh blood, a different voice. In other words, giving someone else a chance, at the program.
Do you know that is not happening?
I know there's instances at Chagrin Falls and other high schools where that doesn't happen. Yeah, there's coaches that have been there for a significant amount of time.
Are there other contenders for that role that are not getting a shot?
I think if that person wasn't there by the natural vacuum, there would be. And I also think that people would hesitate to even make themselves known as possible candidates because the person's been there for so long. And I just don't think it's good for the program. I don't think it's good for the school. And let's be honest, most of these kids are not going to pay, put their families, the food on the table by sports. They're supposed to be learning, growing, having fun. And I think turnover of coaches can help in that.
So you're proposing some sort of modified term limits for high school sports coaching.
Yeah, seems like I like term limits.
All right. So in other words, you're not forcing the coach out, but
no.
you're basically creating an evaluation where there's almost like a burden of proving that he should stay relative to somebody else getting a shot.
Yeah, like let's take a fresh look at this. Maybe it turns out they're like, hey, this person's awesome. Everyone loves them. It's not a subjective one kid didn't get enough playing time. Mm-hmm. It's a whole evaluation. We're going to keep them and let's do it in another 10 years. Or it's going to be, let's give someone else a try. Maybe it's a chance to say to the head coach, have you stopped and thought maybe you want to give someone else a chance?
Are you aware of any, I know it sounds like I'm deposing you, but are you aware of any facts right now or candidates right now that would say, yeah, this is a problem. I'd be a coach right now if it weren't for so-and-so having this perceived tenure or something like that? I mean,
no, I'm only aware of.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I'm just aware of some people that would say, gee, it would be nice if we had a different voice, we had a change, and there's a lot of talk amongst the parents, but you're kind of powerless in that situation.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because so my daughter, Allie, is a sophomore at Solon, and she plays soccer, right? So when we were in grade school,
best sport in the world. Go ahead.
It's a great sport. I knew nothing about it until Allie started doing whatever she was doing. I think actually she played rec soccer in Chagrin Falls up at Gurney when she was in kindergarten, and then she went on to travel. And I didn't play soccer in high school or know anything about it, but I quickly, as I say, became the world's foremost expert on soccer refereeing. It's almost instantaneous, but that's a different issue. But you hear things, and the only thing that I would say, and I don't think Steve's saying this at all, I think he's actually saying the opposite, but the problem with high school sports is the parents. And you hear things, and parents talk about coaches, and you hear, there's a certain narrative that you hear, and you have to take it with a grain of salt, because then Allie's a good example. We heard all this stuff about the Solon soccer coach, about how she's this or she's that or she's that. And we got there. She's everything you'd want in a coach. She's straightforward. She's not political. She gives every kid a chance. She loves hard work. She loves hustle. Ironically, she doesn't mind if you're a tiny kid, which everything the stars sort of aligned for my daughter. And, she played varsity soccer as a freshman, which is not something that we thought, based on what we had heard, that she'd have the opportunity to do. And I think it's a great idea, because ultimately it needs to be based on the experience that the kids are having. And when coaches have been there for a while, they just sort of get set in their, there's nothing inventive coming into the program, and it's just sort of and I think, and I can only speak to Solon. I don't really know anything about Chagrin Falls or Kenston's sports, other than I know some of the coaches and some of the players. But in Solon, the athletic director is very involved in all the programs, and is at all the games, and is constantly asking parents or anyone who's around, how things are going. And that, we had our athletic director, Mark McGuire, just retired, and then Jim McQuaid, who's the football coach, is the new athletic director. I know both of them really well, and they're constantly soliciting me for opinions on program type stuff, which is great, because then I get to give them feedback. And they actually, they switched lacrosse coaches a couple of years ago and gave, actually, ironically, a couple parents an opportunity to coach, and they've been great. And I love the way it's set up as, and I think 10 years is probably too long. I would do it every 5 years, because it's not like a term. I don't set it up as a term limit. I'd set it up as let's take a fresh look at the program and decide if we're going to do another 5 years. But I love the idea, because I think, it's great for the kids.
You know what I like about you guys? You don't shy away from controversy. It's not a popularity contest with you two.
No,
I like it.
Absolutely.
I'm generally in favor of term limits for almost everything, but which I think what we're saying is synced up. I not a hard and fast. You turn this age and you're out, or you've served these terms and you're out. But I agree that the burden almost shifts to reevaluating after you've been there a few times, because I think you're right. I think that there's inertia that happens when someone's been in a seat long enough. And I think that's true for most things.
Agree.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
but I don't know. It's a balance, right? Because Coach Wilson is one of my favorite coaches ever. I mean, she's just phenomenal, and I had nothing great things to say about her. And my opinion changed. My opinion changed, but what I had heard was 180 degrees out of phase to what actually occurred when I got there.
Well, it would seem like this is another one of those things where there should be some data, right? I mean, you would think that this is not the first, time people are thinking about this. I would imagine that there's data out there. Do some sort of term limits in high school, college athletics, whatever, work? Are they good for the program? My guess is there is data, and my guess is it does work.
I would agree, and I think the problem that you have is athletic directors, who are ultimately the liaison between the Board of Education and probably handle a lot of that stuff, are by and large, they got a million things to do, and if they have a coach for basketball, they have a coach for soccer, then that's one more thing they don't have to deal with. So they're not in, they don't have an incentive to go look, and you have to create an incentive for them to reevaluate and say, hey, should we be going a different direction? Because I do know of people in the local area, geographically speaking, that would take any of the three jobs. But they're not going to, I'm talking soccer, and now I'm talking the three schools we're talking about, but those aren't open,
I think too that part of the inertia is people don't want to take responsibility for change when change goes south, right? So there's the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Once you make a change, your team starts losing, somebody's going to start pointing fingers.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, we're gonna zoom in one more level. We're gonna do the lightning round. You guys ready?
Ready.
You sure you want to take a lap? Do some stretches.
I mean, we've all been through the lightning round. Whatever
this is
questions you have,
Can you start with Karl first?
There's air quotes around lightning for sure.
This is an all new and improved lightning
There's
round.
no lightning round here.
All right, here we go. Steve, since you just said Karl should go first, we're starting with you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you're not allowed to say the Bible.
Well, you could just go back and neither one of us is going to say the Bible. Let's get out there, but you could just go back and forth, and he.
Well,
can
no,
go
I'm
first
going. I'm saying we're going to. We're not doing.
Yeah, how's
all
this
going to
go?
It's the same question. First you, then you.
Then
right?
I get the next first question, then it goes to him.
We'll see.
It's like the snake draft.
The first question is, what is the non-religious book, or you can also name an author, whose words you apply the most in your life on a day-to-day basis? Most influential book or author in your life?
All right, so you have to go way back into like the 1980s or 90s.
I know what he's going to say.
And I read this book
I bought
once
it
every
because
year
after
or
his
two.
last podcast.
So it's How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, dude, that's not the book I thought you were going to say. Last time you were on this podcast, you cited a book that was like, it was How to Sell something. I forget. It was a paperback.
Oh, no. I know what it was. It was The Psychology of Winning by Dr. Dennis Waitley.
Yes.
That's probably the second most influential book. Both of
Right.
those. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, when I listened to that podcast, I went and bought that book.
What'd you
And
think?
It's old school, man. I mean, that's an old book.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, I literally use these lightning round questions to build my reading list.
That's a good one.
So
Smart.
I've never heard of that one, and it sounds awesome.
I got it in my basement if you want it.
What's the title again?
How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay. He's a businessman from Minneapolis.
Top 2 takeaways in 10 seconds or less. What are they?
You are what you think you can become.
Excellent. All right, 1 takeaway is okay too. Karl, the non-religious book or author whose words you apply the most in your life on a day-to-day basis.
So as you've answered the question, so the book that I have a book like Steve does that I read every once in a while. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right?
Freaking love that book.
It's a good book, right?
Oh my God,
And
it's
I'm
so
a
good.
mechanical engineer, and there's all kind of stuff in there about the Air Standard Auto Cycle, but whatever. But it's just one of those books that grounds me, and there's no particular reason to read it, just because I think it's kind of funny. But I mean, it's interesting. But I've got a book that I've read. I read it on tape, and then I bought the book, and I'm going through it again. But it's written by this kid that grew up in Cincinnati, and he went to, I think, Denison. And the book is called Atomic Habits.
Oh, I love it. James Clear.
Dude, it's
fantastic.
a really good book.
Yeah, he lives in Columbus.
Yeah. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, the kid's all of like 30-something years old, and I thought, what am I going to this book? But
That's a life-changing book.
it's a really good book.
Yeah.
And I've sort of and so he's all about how to create good habits, and he's all about setting up your workspace to create habits, and it's just really good stuff. So that's my current obsession is that book.
I recommend that book to a lot of people. I love it. All right. Karl, you go first on this one. You are a professional boxer or MMA fighter. You're walking into the ring. What is the song, album, or band that you're hearing in the background as you walk into the ring?
Jeez. I mean,
blaring through the speakers for the whole arena to hear.
Well, so like I'll say this, like my gait is right on beat with Jive Talking by the Bee Gees, man. I mean, like if that's playing in my headset, it's like it's spot on. But I wouldn't say that. I mean, probably Boogie on Reggae Woman by Stevie Wonder or something like that. That's
Interesting. All right. Okay. Steve?
Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood.
Oh my God, the Delaware Destroyers.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm not evaluating either of your answers, Karl, but I'm gonna. Karl, great tunes. Are they pumping me up as I'm getting ready to do battle?
Or scaring the other side?
I'm getting funky though. I'm enjoying it. I'm boogieing.
Yeah, but I'm not I mean,
you're a lover, not a fighter.
Right. He'd be skipping in. I think,
yeah,
really.
exactly.
All right. Steve, you can ask one question of anyone who ever lived. Who would it be, and what's the question?
So I would ask Jesus Christ why he hasn't come back yet.
Interesting. What do you think he'd say? Follow-up question.
I don't know.
Dude, I'm right here. I'm bagging groceries in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah. Where have you been? That's what I would ask him.
Right on. See, I never knew you were a religious dude, Steve.
I was raised very strict Roman Catholic by my mom and dad, But I've since been excommunicated multiple times, so I'm not a member anymore.
Is that true, or are you making that up?
No, when you get divorced, you're thrown out.
Yeah.
So I've been thrown out twice now.
Is the Pope kind of walking that back these
No,
days at all? They're
no.
sticking with that one, huh?
I'm not even supposed to have communion when I go,
Is that right?
but I still do.
Wow.
Yeah. I let myself out the side door way before the divorce.
Carl,
But I was raised Catholic as well.
you can ask one question of anyone who ever lived. Who is it, and what do you ask them?
It's an easy question because yesterday it was MLK Day. I would want to sit with Martin Luther King and just sort of get his wisdom on what we can do. Like, what is it that we can do here? Because a lot of things happened in the 60s. Civil Rights Acts, a number of them got passed, and we were making progress. And here we are in 2020, and I feel like that we've backslid so far that it shocks me. And I would want his wisdom on what's the roadmap? Like, what's your vision here? What are the things that we need to address? Because it's not where it needs to be, and sort of embarrassingly so.
Yeah. Good. Your answers are both acceptable. What is, Karl, we'll start with you. What is a habit or routine that you do on a regular basis that's giving you the most mileage?
Oh yeah, this is the same lightning round question you asked earlier. It's the
Maybe
same
maybe
habit.
not. I don't know.
Yeah, so I get up at like 4:00 in the morning, but I don't go to the gym like this guy over here. I get up at 4:00 in the morning wherever I am on the planet within, for whatever, and I grab a cup of coffee and I take a walk.
That's right.
I don't say anything to anyone. I usually don't see anybody, and it's the most peaceful 20 minutes, and it just sort of level sets me on a lot of things. So that's the habit I've been doing.
Do you do that when it's butt-ass cold in the middle of winter?
I did it this morning.
Did you?
It's 16 degrees, yeah.
I commend you. I love that habit. You've got more discipline than I do. You do too, Steve. 5 a.m. at the gym is insane. Is that the answer to your question?
Mine is definitely getting up early and getting to the gym early, getting home. Completely kickstarts my day. I do it 6 out of 7 days only because I really force myself to take one day off, but I don't like it.
Do you have a gym at your house?
No, I go to Snap Fitness.
Okay. You don't want to have a gym at your house?
I do not. And it's interesting because there's been a lot of people who suggest that. I want to get out of my house. Not that I don't want to be there, but I just know that that's the time that I'm uninterrupted. That's the time I can concentrate and focus. And if you're down in the basement, people can interrupt you more.
Yeah.
And I just think I wouldn't work out as hard either.
See, my problem is...
Those aren't dissimilar habits, really. I mean, right? Because getting out and getting your mind right is really what it is.
Yeah.
Because you can't just roll out of the rack and start doing stuff.
It's a form of meditation.
Yeah. Totally agree.
No, I think anything you can do to get yourself focused and centered on the present moment and not on all the demands on your time and attention that go throughout your day, more power.
Hey, what are you doing on meditation? You said you've been meditating.
Yeah, every single day for 15 minutes.
What do you use?
I use an app called 10% Happier.
Okay.
Dan Harris wrote this book called 10% Happier, and then it turned into an app. I've used Insight Timer and Headspace before. I recommend both.
Yeah.
I sometimes just set a timer for myself, but I really like the guided meditations and 10% Happier. And I would say that is my answer to that question. There has been more impact and more change on the way that I think and the way I perceive my own thoughts out because of meditation. Not to mention, you guys we are in a stressful profession. You're dealing with other people's problems, and their problems are extremely stressful to them, and they let you know it. Being able to separate yourself from that stress is so important.
Totally agree. I'm new to meditation. I use Headspace.
Yeah, you like it?
I do. I really like it.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend it. I mean, I think everything you said, I agree with, and it's really helped me to sort of back away from, being in the rat race and just sort of, be a little bit more thoughtful about how things go.
Yeah. How far into it are you?
Oh, I've been doing it for maybe 6 or 8 months.
Oh, good. All right, good. So you've seen impact. You've
10 minutes.
change.
Oh yeah. It's really good.
Good. My problem with going to the gym is the time to and from the actual workout, right? Like I can't justify it. I get the argument for it, and I could see how it would be beneficial to me, but having a nice gym in my house, which I do, and the door closes, no one's allowed in or out until the workout's done, and that to me is like the most efficient use of my time.
Yeah, I can see that.
But people also, what you hear a lot is if it were in my house, I wouldn't use it.
Right.
Knowing that I got to go to the gym is part of the habit.
Yeah, I agree. Sense. Plus, when you start working out with your kids, the time to and from the gym becomes a really special time. Sure. I think I've become much closer to my sons just by talking to them in that little 10 or 15 minute window.
Who has motivated whom more on days that they don't want to go?
Right now, Max definitely motivates me.
Okay.
And I think in just bringing him there has kind of renewed some ideas and thoughts. And, when you're teaching somebody something, you get better yourself. I think I've definitely seen that.
Who can bench more?
Me right now.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Come on.
Really?
He's 14. Is he a freshman? He's
14. He's 14.
He looks. He looks cut though.
No, he's not even close.
Really?
Not even close. But it'll start. There'll be a day pretty soon.
Max, don't hurt your dad. All right. He's an old man. I mean, don't make him try to show off. He's gonna break his ass. And
he tells me that all the time that I'm old.
All right. It's the end of a day. You've come home. You're about to go to bed. How do you know if you've had a good day?
Is it me or Karl?
Who wants to go first?
I don't have an answer at the ready, but I'll think of one in a second.
Yeah, I'll give you some time. I think, there's days when you come home and you just know that you didn't mess around and you busted your butt. And then there's days that you didn't. Those are the ones that bother you.
I agree.
So it's just a self-reflection, and you did it or you didn't. You can't lie.
I agree with that 100%. There are days where you're like, what you look at your to-do list and you're like, you don't have to look at it. You just know. Like, there was nothing going on. And the days that I like are the days where you get that high from being productive and you you have that buzz about this. And the best thing about those days is if I have a killer day at work, and then I get a soccer game or a tennis match or a lacrosse game to go to, and then we go out to dinner after, or we do something like that, or, there's 80 million things that my kids, that it could possibly do. And then I come home, then that's a huge day. That's just huge.
Yeah, it's a complete day.
Yeah, it is.
I've thought about this question a lot lately. And the way I define a good day for me is there are things that I do really, really well, and most everything else I do very mediocre, or I'm not having fun. And lately, the light bulb that's gone off is that I go to sleep feeling like I have had a great day in proportion to how much of the day I have spent in that place of doing things that I enjoy doing and that I consider myself to be like really good at.
Yeah.
When I'm bogged down doing things that don't check both boxes, I don't feel like I've had as good a day.
See, but you know what's funny about that? So, I sort of have I get what you're saying and I agree with 100%. But the contrary view is the days that I can crank through something that's not my strength. Like I just literally before I came down here, I hit send on a letter that I've got to get out for a client that's like 30 pages. And it's so not my thing, right? Yeah. Guys on my team draft this stuff and then I have to go through it and sort of make sure everything's synthesized right. And it takes me forever because it's not my thing. But there's such a high with being able to crank through something that's not your strength and get it done. And you're like, dude, like I killed that. I don't know, want to ever do it again. Right. Yeah. But because like going to like doing biz dev, I mean, I can do that all day long. I love that, but I don't and I get energy from it. But getting energy from something that I'm not good at, I get there. There's a different level.
Steve, same question, but now it's the end of your life. How will you know that you have had a life well lived?
It's pretty deep.
I don't mess around, Steve.
Yeah, I would say that if my kids have learned how to work hard, how to take care of their family, and basically how to carry on what my mom and dad taught me in a lifetime, then I think that's a life well lived. That I would feel completely fine with it.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that, we have certain mantras the Maersch family lives by. And I think that having everyone at that time, having embodied them in certain ways, achieve success by doing whatever it is that you are putting your mind to and using the abilities that you have, not taking life too seriously, creating good relationships with family and friends and pretty much everyone you meet. And just having that satisfaction of seeing the family at a place where, everyone has sort of embodied that would be a life well lived for sure. And then having, the other thing that I love, and you love the same, I mean, like I said with the outset, we're friends on social media, so I see your stuff too, but life is about creating memories and doing stuff with your family. And, you see people post about guy trips this and girl trips that and taking party buses here and doing that stuff. I'm not into that, right? Ski trips with my kids, cottages in the summertime, going wherever. Those are the kind of things that I think really contribute to what life is all about. Because, that's how they learn how to model what you're trying to get them to model. And I just think it's so much more rewarding than, kids over. I know we sort of grew up in a kids over here, adults over here. We don't really do that, and I don't know you don't either.
Yeah. I like both of your answers and adopt them and as though they are my own. I've been thinking too about measuring life in general in terms of whether I have left the planet a little bit better, left the world a little bit better, just somehow, right? Which is weird because you really can only do so based on your relationships, right, with other people, whether it's your family or whoever, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's all very similar concepts. That is the question that I think I'm going to end the podcast with. So thank you for answering the way you did. With one exception, and I'm stealing this, Dan Harris, that 10% Happier app and podcast. He's got a podcast called 10% Happier, which I highly recommend. But he asked this question of his guests that I think is really cool. Is there anything that I should have asked you but didn't?
From my standpoint, I think we covered it all. Had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's no topic that the two of us, or the three of us really are not going to, hit out of the park in terms of exploring every piece of it and having an opinion. I mean, I think, it's funny, right? I mean, I think that we could be doing this at a bar. Like that's sort of what this is. I just love having these discussions, and I think
this was fantastic. I thank you guys both for doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely have to do this again. We may have to have just a repeat segment. 3 lawyers from Chagrin Falls.
Yeah, collect all the topics you want. The more controversial you put them in the middle of the table, and we'll have opinions on them. I guarantee that. Whether people think it's funny or not is a different issue. But.
Yeah, no, this was awesome. I declare this episode officially a success. Folks, if you have listened to all 1 hour and 48 minutes of this episode, then you are probably on Village Block Club or married to Steve or spend some amount of time with me or Karl. But whoever you are, there is probably a way for you to leave a review for us or for me on this podcast. So do that. iTunes is easy. Do that. There is a Facebook group. If you want to leave a comment, if you want to tell Steve how amazing his answers to the lightning round questions were, that's a good place to do it. Or tell Karl how crazy his answers were. That's a good place to do it. But whatever you do, I appreciate that you've listened this far. I hope you will listen to our next episode, which will come out probably 1 week from today. And thanks for listening. I will see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we thank you for listening. And remember to check out the Gertzberg Law Firm. Whether you are starting, running, growing, or transitioning a business, or if you need to create or update your wills, trust, or estate plan, our team will give you an incredible level of personalized attention and a passionate commitment to meet your objectives. We are veteran-owned, and our award-winning lawyers have the highest ranking from Super Lawyers and Avo. We have also recently received the coveted Weatherhead 100 Upstarts Award for a second year in a row, and we are among the first Ohio business law firms to offer our clients a non-billable alternative on every single matter we handle for them, and opt out of the billable hour. What we are most proud of, though, are the many things our clients rely on us for. We successfully defend them in court, but we also help them avoid the courtroom with our Cover My Six service. We protect their assets through good estate and succession planning, and we assist our clients in many non-legal business services like recruiting and business development. We want our clients to feel confident in their choices and to help them resolve any issues or potential problems quickly and efficiently so they can get back to what they love, running their businesses. More than just litigators, we are trusted advisors, problem solvers, and growers of businesses. Let us help you and your company. Call us or find us online to learn more. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.